Imagine walking into a Ford dealership in 1969 and driving home a car that was, for all practical purposes, a race car with license plates, not a sporty trim, not a performance package, an actual homologated competition machine that Ford was legally required to sell to ordinary buyers, just so the factory team could go racing. That's not an exaggeration, it's a loophole, and Ford exploited it brilliantly for decades. Here are 10 of them. Number 10. The Ford Capri R, S, 2600 and R, S 3100. In the early 1970s, European touring car racing was fiercely competitive, and Ford wanted its Capri coupe to dominate it. The problem was the rules. Racing series back then required something called homologation, proof that a high-performance model actually existed as a real production car, sold to real customers, not just a one-off built exclusively for the track. To race a high-output version of the Capri, Ford needed a homologated road car to back it up. Enter the RS2600 and later the RS3100, fuel-injected and big-bore versions of the Capri, built specifically to satisfy those requirements. Buyers who walked into a European Ford dealership could drive home a car that shared its DNA directly with the works racing Capri, dominating circuits across the continent. These weren't subtle cars either. Flared fenders, aggressive front splitters, and engines tuned with racing in mind gave ordinary Capri buyers a genuine taste of what the factory team was running on Sunday. Even the badge placement and exhaust note were clearly borrowed straight from the competition cars, leaving little doubt about what these coupes were actually built to do. Number 9. The Ford Lotus Cortina. Before Ford ever built a dedicated performance division, they partnered with Lotus, yes, that Lotus, the legendary British racing and engineering outfit, to transform a humble family sedan into a genuine saloon car racer. The Lotus Cortina arrived with a twin-cam engine, lightweight body panels, and a distinctive white and green livery that became instantly recognizable on racetracks across Britain and Europe. Ford needed enough road-going examples sold to the public to qualify it for saloon car racing and international rallying, so dealers quietly sold what amounted to a thinly disguised competition car to anyone willing to write a check. What makes this one special is the partnership itself. Long before Performance Ford meant SVT or RS badging, it meant calling in one of the most respected names in motorsport engineering and asking them to build something that could win. That collaboration set a precedent that echoed through decades of Ford performance history, long after the original Cortina had faded from showrooms. Number 8. The Ford Falcon, GTHO, Phase 3. Over in Australia, Ford was fighting an entirely different battle, the legendary Bathurst 500 endurance race, where Ford and Holden waged war for national bragging rights every single year. The GTHO Phase 3 was Ford Australia's ultimate weapon, a homologation special built around a massive V8 and tuned specifically to survive the brutal demands of Bathurst's long straights and punishing corners. To make it eligible, road versions were sold through Australian dealerships, and for a brief, glorious window, the Phase 3 held a reputation as one of the fastest four-door production sedans anywhere in the world. Think about that for a moment. An ordinary family sedan body, available to any buyer with the cash, capable of speeds that embarrassed dedicated sports cars of the era. That's the homologation loophole working exactly as intended, just on the other side of the planet. Proof that the rule produced equally wild results, no matter which continent Ford happened to be racing on. Just a quick one. Would love if you hit subscribe. Now back to the facts. Number 7. The Ford Mustang Boss 429. Back in America, Ford had a different problem. They developed a powerful semi-Hemi V8 they desperately wanted to race in NASCAR, but the engine was far too large to fit naturally into the Mustang's engine bay. Ford's solution was as expensive as it was clever. Rather than redesign the engine, they modified the Mustang's front end and had outside contractors hand-build roughly 1,300 road cars specifically to satisfy NASCAR's homologation rules. Each Boss 429 that left a dealership was essentially a rolling permission slip, allowing Ford's NASCAR teams to race that semi-Hemi engine on Sundays. The irony is that the Boss 429 wasn't even where Ford expected it to compete. The homologation rule cared only that enough street cars existed, not that buyers would ever take theirs anywhere near a track. Most owners simply enjoyed driving a piece of NASCAR-eligible engineering down to the grocery store, never once turning a wheel on an oval, and likely never realizing just how much engineering compromise went into squeezing that engine under the hood in the first place. Number 6. The Ford Mustang Boss 302. While the Boss 429 chased NASCAR eligibility, its smaller sibling, the Boss 302, existed to satisfy an entirely different racing series, the SCCA's Trans Am Championship, where compact, high-revving V8 muscle cars went wheel-to-wheel on road courses rather than ovals. To compete, Ford needed a homologated road car with the right combination of chassis tuning, engine displacement, and aerodynamic aids. The Boss 302 delivered exactly that, becoming a genuine road-going version of Ford's Trans Am race car, sold to the public through ordinary dealers who likely had no idea they were handing over a piece of motorsport history. The name proved durable enough that Ford revived it decades later for the 2012 and 2013 model years, building a modern Boss 302 that paid tribute to the original while delivering genuinely serious road course capability of its own. Number 5. The Ford Escort RS Cosworth. If there's one car on this list instantly recognizable by silhouette alone, it's this one. The Escort RS Cosworth's enormous rear wing, nicknamed the whale tail, became one of the most iconic shapes in rally history, instantly identifiable even to people who've never followed motorsport a day in their life. Ford built the road car specifically to homologate their Group A rally weapon, and unlike some entries on this list, they didn't stop at a few hundred examples. Roughly 7,000 road-going Escort Cosworths were built and sold to the public, a genuinely substantial number for a car this extreme, with turbocharged power and rally-bred all-wheel drive available to anyone who could find one on a dealer lot. That wing wasn't there for show either. Ford's engineers shaped it specifically to generate real downforce at speed, meaning ordinary buyers were driving around with genuine aerodynamic engineering developed for international rally stages. Number 4. The Ford Sierra R, S Cosworth, and RS 500. Few cars intimidated touring car racing grids quite like the Sierra Cosworth. Built to dominate Group A racing, the road-going Sierra Cosworth arrived with a turbocharged engine and an oversized rear spoiler that immediately signaled this was no ordinary family hatchback. Then came the RS 500, an even more extreme homologation, special limited to just 500 units, built specifically to give Ford's race teams additional upgrades to exploit under competition rules. The RS 500 went on to become one of the most dominant touring car race cars of its era, while the handful of street versions became some of the most sought-after collector Fords in existence. What started as a box-ticking exercise to satisfy racing regulations turned into one of the most legendary performance Fords ever built, proving the homologation loophole could occasionally produce something far greater than the rules ever required. Collectors today treat the RS 500 less like a footnote in Ford's lineup and more like a genuine landmark, a car whose entire reason for existing was a 500-unit technicality. Number 3. The Ford RS200. Group B rally was, by most accounts, the wildest and most dangerous era in motorsport history, producing purpose-built monsters that pushed far beyond what public roads were ever designed to handle. The RS200 was Ford's entry into that insanity, a mid-engined, all-wheel drive machine that looked more like a spaceship than anything else on a 1980s dealer lot. FIA rules demanded road-legal versions exist, so Ford built around 200 street cars, producing roughly 250 horsepower in standard form, with a factory upgrade package pushing closer to 300. For context, that was a genuinely serious output for a road car of that era, delivered in a chassis derived directly from one of the most extreme rally cars ever built. Owning an RS200 meant owning a piece of motorsport's most dangerous, and fascinating chapter, built not because Ford wanted to sell 200 spaceship-like cars to the public, but because the rules left them no other choice. It remains one of the rarest and most unusual road cars Ford ever sold through an ordinary dealership network. Number 2. The Ford GT40. This is the car that started the legend. Built with one explicit purpose: beating Ferrari at Le Mans, the world's most prestigious endurance race. The GT40 succeeded spectacularly, winning the legendary race 4 years running and humiliating Ferrari on home turf in the process. While the racing versions get most of the historical attention, Ford also built a small number of road-going Mark III versions, sold to wealthy private buyers who wanted to own a genuine piece of the car that beat Ferrari. These weren't mass-produced by any stretch. They were rare, expensive, and reserved for an elite handful of buyers who could appreciate exactly what they were driving. The GT40 didn't just win races, it became the single most important rivalry story in motorsport history, immortalized decades later in film, and it set the template for every Ford performance halo car that followed. Even today, surviving examples of that road-going Mark III rank among the most valuable Fords ever sold at auction, a direct reflection of just how few were built and just how much history each one carries. Number 1. The Ford GT. Decades after the GT40 made history, Ford revived the name and the spirit with a modern supercar designed to honor that legacy directly. The first modern GT arrived in the mid-2000s as a tribute, but the second generation, launched in 2017, took things further by developing the road car alongside Ford's actual Le Mans GTE race program. That's not marketing language. The road-going GT and the race car genuinely shared development resources, meaning buyers lucky enough to be selected by Ford weren't just purchasing a car inspired by motorsport. They were purchasing the closest thing to a modern Le Mans contender that money could legally put on public roads. Ford famously made buyers apply for the privilege of purchasing one, turning the entire ownership experience into something closer to being selected for a motorsport program than simply writing a check. Applicants were screened on factors well beyond their bank balance, including their willingness to actually drive and showcase the car rather than flip it for profit. It's the homologation spirit reborn for the modern era, even without a strict regulatory requirement forcing Ford's hand this time. Every single car on this list exists because of a loophole that manufacturers were forced to navigate, not because Ford set out to build affordable supercars for the public. Racing rules demanded real production numbers, and Ford repeatedly turned that requirement into an opportunity, handing ordinary buyers genuine pieces of motorsport engineering disguised as regular dealership inventory. That's what makes these cars so different from anything being built today. Nobody walks into a dealership now and accidentally drives home a NASCAR-eligible engine or a Group B rally chassis. The rules that created these machines mostly don't exist anymore, and manufacturers have far more sophisticated ways of satisfying modern racing regulations without handing the public anything nearly this raw. So the next time you see a Cosworth whale tail or a Boss 429 badge at a car show, remember what you're actually looking at. It's not a tribute car. It's not a special edition built for marketing photos. It's a genuine race car that the rulebook forced onto a public road, built in numbers small enough to stay rare and rule-driven enough to stay honest, and that's a story no modern performance car can fully replicate. If this gave you a new appreciation for these machines, subscribe for more. See you in the next one.